Hello and welcome to my video about conflict management. I'm your host, Nathan, and we're gonna get started. So there's 5 main types of conflict management. The first one is collaborating, where you both work together to fix something. So you value both your goals and your relationships. So these two people are like, they're collaborating and working together to fix whatever goals they want and maintaining the relationship that they have. We have competing. This one is where you just want to win. I put like a little flag. It's like a race. You're only there to win. So if you're in an argument, you want to win. We got avoiding is the third one, where you're running away. You don't like confrontation, and so you just avoid the problem at all costs. The fourth one is accommodating, where you are the one who's always comforting the other person. So you're basically saying you value relationships over your goals. And then finally, we have the fifth one, which is compromising, is where you both have to give up something in order to maintain your goals and your relationships. And now we're going to look at a few things that help just generally when you're trying to do conflict management. A few things. So one of them is focus on the problem, not the person. And this one is important because it's not always that the person is the problem. It's very easy to sometimes say, oh, well, it's all your fault. And it's easy to look at one person, blame them, because it's just easier that way. But focusing on the problem is way better, because each person has their own different set of problems. And then another one is reflective listening. This one is especially important if you're in an argument, because if you're in an argument, all you really want to do sometimes is state your point because you think that you're right. But in a fair argument, it's good to kind of allow yourself an option to listen to what they have to say, because maybe what their input is important and it might even change your mind. Another very important thing is use I in your statements. Now this one might be a bit confusing at first, but I'll explain it. So if you always say, it's your fault, it's you, or you always refer to the other person when you're talking, sometimes they don't understand where you're coming from because you're not talking about yourself. So if you start using more I statements, you can kind of navigate your emotions better by saying, well, I feel like this, instead of just saying, you are doing this. Because when you say you a lot or your, it's like accusing someone. And when you accuse people, a lot of times they tend to either, get defensive or aggressive or something. And either one of those, defensive or aggressive, doesn't really help an argument or a conflict. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. And then, let's see. Oh, this one's good. You got take a break. Take a break when you need a break in an argument. Because a lot of the times, you're both basically just yelling at each other or getting too aggressive. And this happens because people don't give adequate time to really process their emotions. So like if you're arguing for like 20 minutes straight, you could think the 12 to 20 minute segment of the argument is going to be a lot more chaotic than the first 12 minutes. And that's because you didn't take a break when maybe you should have. And another one is work together. To resolve. Because if you value this relationship, if it's your friend or your family or your partner, and you're arguing, really, you want to work together to fix the problem. Because if you're not working together, if only one of you is working to fix it, the other person is disconnected from the issue, therefore the issue's not going to be fixed all the way. So now that we have that, the final part is the guidelines for if you are in an argument or some sort of conflict. These are just some basic guidelines on how to kind of avoid losing out on your goals or your relationships, avoid, having an argument turn explosive. So the first one is simple. It's just trying to be calm, calmness. So calmness is good because the more calm you are, it's easier for people to kind of listen to you and understand you, especially when you get angry. Sometimes, your thoughts start racing. You might talk faster. You might say things that you regret later. So being calm is very important. And another thing is you want to express how you feel in words and only words. Because, you don't want to hit someone else, you don't want to get into a fight. And sometimes people don't understand like physical gestures as much. So you always have to use words to express how you feel. That's a very important one. Be specific, Be specific about what, the problem is and how you want to fix it. So if the issue was someone is saying, oh, well, the kitchen is dirty every day. You never clean the house. So maybe you want to be specific about just the kitchen is dirty. You just want them to fix the kitchen, not the entire house. And then this one kind of goes with it. One thing at a time. One thing at a time. It's easier when you focus on one part of a solution at a time, because if you just throw everything onto someone at once, it can not only be overwhelming, but it can be confusing, and it can lead to a lower chance of really coming to an understanding with each other. Don't degrade. This one is pretty self-explanatory, but just don't just sit there and call them names. Don't try to hit them where it hurts. If they have like a certain, disability, don't just talk about that the entire time, because that'll not only trigger them, but it'll make them very uncomfortable, and it's not appropriate to really do that. And then this is one I've touched on before, but accusations really does lead to the other person to be defensive. And what that means is, if you're accusing someone, oh, it's all your fault, they're going to try to defend themselves. And like, that's the only really thing you can do if someone's accusing you, is you're going to act defensive. And don't generalize. Or exaggerate. So if there's just one thing that's really bothering you, you have to be, specific about it. You don't want to just generalize or exaggerate the problem. So back to the kitchen example, if it's just the kitchen that's dirty, you don't want to generalize by saying the entire house is dirty, or exaggerate by saying, that the other person is a dirty person because they don't clean the kitchen. And no stockpiling. This one kind of goes with the one thing at a time, because if you're stockpiling, what that means is you're basically just every single problem in your head about the other person, you're throwing it at them all at once. So like, maybe they didn't clean the kitchen, and maybe they also didn't take out the trash. Maybe they also didn't, drive to the grocery store when you asked them to, and you throw everything at them at once. And that's not a very effective way, And this one is good too, especially for shyer people, is try not to shut down or stay silent. What that means. Shutting down is just basically where you just sit there, you be quiet, you let them argue, and a lot of times it may seem like, oh, well, what's wrong with being silent and shutting down? You do have the right to be silent in an argument, but it's better to really take a break when that happens, because imagine if you were the other person in that scenario. Then it'd be very frustrating because someone is just sitting there silent and you feel like you're not really getting their point across because they're not responding at all. And then another one is you want to establish rules. This is for like the future. So the future, you basically, if you do come to an understanding, if all these worked and you come to an understanding, what in the future are you going to do? Have rules so that the problem doesn't occur again. So, back to the example, let's just say person A will clean the kitchen and person B will go to the grocery store. Not one of them will do both, and not one of them will do neither. So you have rules, and this is especially easier to do if you are the collaborating type of person in conflict management or the compromising kind of person in conflict management. Those two are good because you kind of work together in some way. And when you work together, it's much, much easier to establish rules and keep a relationship rather than destroy it. And just another one is, this one's just general. Just don't try to win, try to help each other. So a lot of times, you're in an argument, you want to win. It's all about, I know what's right. But this can be destructive because, what if in some scenarios the other person was right? And then you find that you might find that out later down the road. And then when you do find out later down the road, you're going to regret it. And you're going to feel like, oh, well, I should have done this. And I should have done that. But really, to avoid that, you want to try to help both yourself and the other person. You don't want to just try to win, because even if you win an argument, what's that going to get you? It'll get you satisfaction, but that satisfaction is only temporary. So that's just about everything when it comes to conflict management. I'd love to hear you guys' input in the comments if you have anything to say. Thank you very much for watching, and look out for future videos about just general mental health topics. Oh, and I forgot to mention, conflict management ties into mental health because, it's obviously about relationships and how to keep them and maintain them. And without proper relationships, you might feel isolated, alone, which can lead you to become depressed. So that's why conflict management is important when it comes to mental health. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you in a future video. Goodbye.